Welcome to another episode of the Do Hard Things podcast. This is a special episode that I wasn't planning on recording, but my social media started blowing up today. And what I noticed was in a few cycling groups, being an avid cyclist, that there was a cyclist in peril in my local community. This cyclist had been traveling cross-country, conducting random acts of kindness. And when he got to my neighborhood here in Waynesville, Missouri, the exact opposite happened to him. His bike was stolen. And so there is crime that happens everywhere, but of all the communities, like this is such a helpful place that it was hard to believe, heartbreaking, but it ultimately led to us having this conversation today. And for that, I'm grateful, because had that not happened, we may not have been talking today. But Colin McConnell has been traveling cross country on his bike. He'd ridden 4,100 miles so far, and conducting random acts of kindness to bring awareness and positivity to the world. And he had his bike stolen. And so we kind of go into detail on that in this podcast. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Colin. Oh, and before we do that, I apologize, but because his computer was stolen and his iPad was stolen, we couldn't use StreamYard. We had to use Zoom, and the quality of the audio isn't as good, so I apologize for that, but the content is fantastic, so you're gonna love it. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Do Hard Things podcast. I'm your host, Jay Teague, certified high performance coach, transformational mindset coach. And today's a very unique podcast because I wasn't even planning on recording this. I have with us in the studio, Colin McConnell. And usually I prepare, but this one's so impromptu because I just got some Facebook messages about an hour ago saying that Colin's riding across the United States. And my friends are like pinging me on Facebook, like, how do we help him out? He had his bike stolen. And Colin, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Tell us who you are and what you're doing.
My name's Colin. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I am visually impaired. Some people might say I'm legally blind, but I can see enough to ride my bicycle. And I left Detroit on July 2nd to pedal my bicycle throughout the United States. I've been through 23 states so far, and I've pedaled 4,100 miles. And now I am here in beautiful Missouri.
Yeah, welcome to our neighborhood. Can you tell us what happened to you last night?
So it's crazy. I've had a lot of trauma happen to me along this way. And, a lot of times I've had people who I thought were close to me telling me to quit. Even when I was in Boston, they were telling me to quit. But I know, like, mentally, if I would have quit, that would have crushed me. I would have just sat in a house by myself with just my thoughts. And I know I couldn't quit because I had a mission and I have a journey. And this is just part of the journey. So I got caught in a hurricane in New Orleans, and that was crazy. And then I made it through that. And I was like, if I can make it through a hurricane, then anything's possible. And then 2 days ago, a lot of times with trauma, as a kid, when I cleaned my room, I would put it all in the closet. So my dad thought my room was clean, but I'm just putting my toys in a closet. I know where it's at, but no one else does. And that's kind of like my trauma is like, all the bad things that have happened to me are stuck away in a closet. Well, finally, like 2 days ago, the closet broke. And then I just was sobbing for like 3 hours, which is like 30 some miles. And so I was like, this is the worst day of the trip. And then the next day I started pedaling towards here. And it's very hard to pedal on Route 66 because there's no shoulder. Mm-hmm. And a couple of days ago, I even got clipped by a car and I fell and, messed up my ankle pretty bad. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on the shoulder on 44. It's, huge shoulder. I'll be safe. So at this point, I'm flying. I'm probably doing 20 miles an hour going on the shoulder. And then I went over this like little wire. Well, the little wire was attached to about 12 feet of wire. And this all got in my derailleur and I couldn't even pedal. It was so in there. So I pulled to the side of the road. I got way in the grass down in the ditch, and I spent about an hour and a half trying to get this out of my derailleur. And so it was impossible. I got a lot of it out, but I wasn't able to get like the stuff that was really, really in there. So I put there's no place to lock my bike up. You know, it's in the middle of the expressway with nothing, no trees, nothing. So I threw it in the ditch behind some grass and some bushes. And I decided to take the back wheel and hoof it to a gas station, which is a mile away. The Eagle Sun.
Yeah, the Eagle Stop.
Yeah. So I went there, and then the semi truck pulls up next to me. He's like, "I'll drive you to the gas station." And then he drove me to the gas station. I've never been in a semi truck, and you know, I listen to a lot of murder mystery podcasts. So I'm like, "Oh, this is where it's gonna happen," but whatever. And he got me there like right away. You know, he just flew, and I stepped out of the pickup truck or the semi truck. I fell backwards on my back. My whole backpack, you know, the bladder bags, just completely broke. So water was everywhere when I fell. Everyone thought some dude picked me up. I was like, "No, I'm good." And then this fireman, he saw me walking. He hurried to the gas station, and he was off duty, and he got the wire out right away immediately. And he drove me back to my bike, and my bike was gone. And they stole basically my bike without a back tire and all my gear. Everything that I own was in there, unfortunately. And it just kind of leaves me with an empty feeling, and it almost violated because they have pictures of my nephew and me, and it was very, very put me in a very dark place, which I try not to go in there. And I went to the fire station. I actually met with the police. They were super, super nice. He actually drove me to Walmart so I can get a charger. And at this point, I was just going to get a hotel and really evaluate what am I going to do next. I know if I would have flown home, that would have ruined the journey for me, because the journey's not over yet. I'm only 800 miles away from home. And so I decided that I'm going to walk. I'm going to walk until I can get to a bike shop that has the bike I need. And I'm just going to keep this mission going. And then I went to Walmart. I got a bunch of battery packs, and I was ready to start hoofing it. And then all of a sudden, this person jumps out of a van and screams my name. And I thought I was hearing things. And all of a sudden she said it again, and she was coming at me wearing a Michigan shirt, which I'm from Detroit, Michigan. So I was like, whoa. So Rebecca from Cookies, she actually, what happened was somebody tagged her in my Facebook post. She shared it, and within 3 minutes, she saw me walking out of Walmart. And that's what's beautiful about, a small city and a community. And she just looked at me and she goes, "I know a bunch of people because she's originally from literally the same city. Her siblings went to my high school." Yeah. I mean, way difference, but it just shows you how small the world is. Once we start talking, we know the same people and da-da-da. So she's like, "You're safe. I'm going to be here for you." And that's basically where I'm at now, is just the journey's not over. This is just a crazy chapter that I'm not a huge fan of this chapter, but it is still a chapter of the journey. And it's just, I'm not going to quit. As hard as this is, I'm not ready to quit.
I don't know Rebecca well. I only know her from Facebook. We've had a lot of Facebook conversation over the years, and it's crazy. We live in a small town, but it's amazing how connected you can be on social, because I feel like I know her pretty well, even though I haven't probably spent a lot of time face to face with her. I saw her message because I was tagged. We have a local cycling community, so they tagged a bunch of the cyclists. I'm like, oh shoot, we got a fellow cyclist that's needs some help. And then I knew when Rebecca, because I saw a photo of you and her, and like, okay, you're good to go. At least I know you're safe. You're good to go. Looks like you're going to get, all of the things that you need. We've got, anything that you need in this local community, despite what just happened to you. Of all the places to have this kind of issue, this is a really good military, down home community that will. Don't let this incident paint a bad picture on our community, despite what happened to you.
I mean, obviously, like I'm in a lot of pain, honestly. Like,
yeah,
you know, emotionally, and I mean, obviously physically too, because I've pedaled 4,100 miles. But, you know, at the end of the day, I've never felt more welcomed by a community. You know, I mean, I always say you can't spell community without unity. And I've definitely felt that in this community. Is I've gotten, no joke, probably 60 to 80 messages on all my social media platforms from people that live in the city and said, whatever you need, can I buy you dinner? Can I buy you breakfast? You know, or I'm working till 4. I'm going to ride around and look for your bike and things like that. So, you know, I've got people at all the gas stations knowing, you know, if someone happens to drop off my bike. I mean, that's the best case scenario, is someone was doing a good deed and a kindness and figured they'd pick it up. And maybe if they heard me on a TV show, a podcast, you know, or something, it could lead to getting my belongings back. But I'm definitely, that's a very small percentage, but I definitely believe in, you never know.
You know, with everything that you see in social media and just the tension, you know, it's moments like this where I see like my Facebook community and my local community rally together to help you out. Despite, I hate that this happened to you, but from my perspective, like, it just feels good knowing that it's just like a breath of fresh air. Like, there are good people that are willing to do good for you and help people out, you know, and I hate that this has happened to you. I guess let's do this. How did you get started with this endeavor to begin with? Because this is not this is a very difficult challenge. So what prompted you to do this?
So 6 years ago to the day, I rode my bicycle from Detroit to Austin, Texas for charity. I rode with 2 friends. And, you know, at this point of our journey, I believe we would have been in Oklahoma City. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life, because it brought people together to do something bigger than themselves. You know, this bike ride's not about me by any means. It's hopefully so much more, and could hopefully inspire other people, which it has. You know, people tag me on social media, things that they're doing. So with everything that's been going on the past couple of years, all I've been seeing on my social media is negativity and hate and, you know, things like that. And it's, you can believe that there's good, or you can be the good. And I choose to be the good. And, you know, I heard once that it only takes one raindrop to make a flood. And I'm that one raindrop right now. And I'm hoping to meet lots of raindrops like yourself and people in this community. And if we can come together and do some good and positivity, we can make a flood of goodness and a flood of positivity. So along my journey, I've done some amazing random acts of kindness that have been because of people supporting me through social media. You know, you got to keep the social and social media. And without that, I would have never gotten to this point by any means, without people helping me. You know, I don't have any sponsors. You know, this has only been because people supporting me. You know, $1 here or $5 here has helped me eat, sleep, and do random acts of kindness. You know, and like you said, the power of social media. I got stuck in Hurricane Ida. I was on the Gulf Coast when the water and the rain started coming. And then I figured it out. I was like, I can make it to Baton Rouge in a day and a half if I just book it. And then I posted that on social media, and I get a message from a lady said, "You're not going to Baton Rouge. That place is going to get hit the hardest." And then she came and picked me up, took me to a hotel in New Orleans, put me there for the weekend, and wait out the hurricane. And from that, this total stranger came and picked me up and got me out of New Orleans. But then he's like, I want to do something. So I put on social media, we were going to the bayou where people lost everything. The tornado went through there during the hurricane, washed out people's houses. They didn't have power, electricity. They probably still don't. It's been weeks and weeks. So we got gas because the closest gas station was, 2 hours away because it's such a gas shortage. So we brought down food, gas, water, supplies because they were taking baths in the bayou. But because of social media, I put a call out there, and within 2 hours, we got over $1,200 that we could use that money for supplies to help these people. And down there, they're like, no one comes down to help us. So that's kind of the power of community, and social media has been breathtaking. So yeah, that's why I really started. Is I just wanted to see different communities around the United States and see the positivity and the beauty that's in it.
Mm-hmm. I recently did a random act of kindness challenge. I'm not sure if you're familiar. You've ever heard of 75 Hard?
I've heard it. Yeah, yeah.
And there's a third phase to it. There's like, it's basically 75 days. You do these 5 tasks, and then there's different phases. And the very last phase of the year, you have 30 days. Part of that is doing a random act of kindness each day. And I've done random acts of kindness like here and there, but doing it deliberately, like going out of your way, doing it day after day after day, is a really unique experience. And I recommend people do it for a sustained amount of time. What are some of the things that you have learned from doing a random act of kindness each day?
I think the biggest thing is, one, you're brightening somebody's day, because you don't know what someone's going through. You know, it's just inside, a lot of us carry trauma, or we carry burdens that aren't even with us. And I there's a story of, there's a hair product called Aveda. And then, so this guy who started it was cutting this lady's hair. He's been cutting it for years. And he had some more time, and he worked well with her. And then he sat down with her and talked to her, took that time with her. And he said, you know what? I've cut your hair for years. This is the most beautiful you ever looked. He's just that one little encouragement. And she said, thank you. And she just went about her business. And he's like, oh, you know, that was fun. She sent a letter back to him and said, I wanted you to make me look pretty, because I was going to go home and kill myself. Oh. And because you took the time to acknowledge me, no one's ever told me I was beautiful before. You know, I couldn't even remember the last time. And she goes, it shows that there's people out there that care, you know, and he had no idea, but you don't know what people are going through. And so I think with me, I've noticed that just simple things like, I surprise people and, you know, buy their dinner, and I tell the waitress, or, you know, the server, don't let them know it's me. I want them to know it's a random act of kindness. And what's been happening is people have been paying it forward. So it's because I bought their coffee, they're going to buy their coffee for somebody else. And I just hope that I could just brighten someone's day and inspire them to maybe just help and think, like, our country is very dirty. There's trash everywhere, and it's trash that you wouldn't think, like on the back roads and things like that. And I've been picking up trash along the way. So far, I think I'm at 47 bags of trash. And I hope that maybe one person will say, this guy is crazy enough to ride his bike around the United States to pick up trash in someone else's community. Maybe I can get on my Facebook and say, hey guys, I'm going to go to the local park or the school or our street and pick up trash. If anybody wants to come, this is the time, and bring gloves or whatever. And it takes 1 or 2 people to make a huge difference. So I'm hoping that, yes, that the ripple effect will happen, and then, you know, people can hopefully help each other. But it feels so much better, you know, to be able to put out kindness than hate. And it's a lot easier.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes is, if you want kindness in the world, put it out there, sprinkle that shit everywhere. You know, we need to do that because there's so much negativity out there. But you're right. You never know who you could impact. You don't know what people are going through. We always make assumptions and whatnot, but there are countless stories that I've heard similar to the one that you told us about. You know, that was an intervention that was like a wake up call. Like, you know what, there is kindness in the world, and ultimately saved her life or put her maybe on a different trajectory. You don't know what that act of kindness can do for someone. And exactly. You know, if we want kindness in the world, we're all complaining about kindness. Well, instead of going on social media and bashing people, throwing out negative and hate, let's get out there and physically do something to brighten someone's day. Put the kindness out there. I love that you're bringing awareness.
One of my
despite this horrible thing that's happened to you, we're still talking about kindness, and I just sense that that's a part of your being, part of your fiber, and you know, this is important to you.
It is, you know, it's how I was raised. Like I knew on the weekends, I wasn't a kid that played sports. My parents and my siblings, we would go to, you know, do food drives, and we do clothing drives, and that's what I thought was normal. That's what I thought my life was. You know, I didn't, you know, when people are like, hey, we're going to, you know, see the football game, and I was like, oh, cool. You know, all the homeless people that we helped out or the battered shoulders, I called them my friends, and I was like, I'm going to go help out my friends, you know? And so that's just kind of what I was always used to. And I know that's the legacy that my parents put in me and that I want to keep going. And, you know, I have an amazing nephew, and there's a lot of kids that follow me on social media, and I hope to set that bar very high for them. So when then they're at an age where they realize, like, oh, he did that, I want to go past that, and I want to do something bigger than myself. and hopefully help others as well. Because at the end of the day, it's, what do you want to be known as? Your dash? Like, this is the day you were born, this is the day you die, but what's that dash? And people want kings and queens at their funeral, and I just want friends.
Yeah. No, I think it's important to role model the way, to demonstrate that. I've got 3 kids, and I always like to demonstrate and role model these things, because they need to see people taking action and doing things.
Yeah, simple things like looking at people in the eye and say good morning, and just I love your sweater, and have a great day, and just smiling at somebody. That small little thing can change someone's world. And one of my favorite times in Detroit is I wake up for the sunrise and I take pictures, and I'll ride my bike on the river walk, and there is the friendliest people in the world. They're like, good morning, hey, and it just brightens my day. And it's even how down I might be, it's a game changer.
I always tell my 3 daughters when I drop them off to school every day, listen to your teacher, pay someone a compliment, punch bullies in the nose.
Yeah.
But that really say that I always like, hey, did you pay someone a compliment today? Did you pay your teacher a compliment today? Did you just tell someone that they look nice? Because doesn't it feel good when someone does that for you? And we need that reminder sometimes.
Yeah, it is wild. Even in, our society, when we're looking down at our phones and not up in people's eyes. And I think that simple, kind gesture goes opening a door for somebody, and, putting the shopping carts back in the proper spot.
Now, you describe the shopping cart one. Definitely, it drives. This is a pet peeve. I've shared this numerous times, but how does it go? It's I don't know anyone that's successful that doesn't put their shopping cart away.
That's brilliant.
But it's an indicator of the type of person that you are. I mean, it's the little things that matter. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And if that's the type of person you are, well, there's a direct correlation to probably everything else in your life.
And like you said, karma, it's like, if you don't put your shopping cart away and then you complain that you get a dent in your car from a shopping cart.
Yeah, absolutely. Karma, the universe conspires. Like, whoever took your bike, they got it coming. They don't know it yet, but they got it coming.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of locals. They're like, if I find your bike, and I was like, whoa, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I'll send you.
There's a lot of rivers around here.
Exactly.
So now you mentioned earlier some traumas. Are you open to talking about some of the traumas that you experienced?
In life or on the ride?
Both. I mean, that was one of the reasons that you took on the ride. But
it got me was, my mom got multiple sclerosis when I was a very young boy, and that, seeing, I'm a mama's boy, proud of it, but seeing the person, and even my dad got very sick as well. Both of them unfortunately passed. And it's like, there's a point in your life that you realize that your parents aren't the superheroes you might have realized as a kid. And, like when my dad walked in a room, you knew he walked in a room, but like the minute that his bride died, he died. It was just, you could see he was a shell of a man. When he walked in a room, it was like, whoa, so I think, I think riding, and I'm like, I've lost so much time with them because they died when I was younger. And there's times where I've been talking to them the entire bike ride. And I think like someone might've said something on social media, basically, that about my deceased parents. And I don't normally let trolls get to me, but while I started pedaling, all these emotions flooded out. And, there's that, the hurricane thing kind of messed me up because I've never been in a hurricane before. And obviously my bike getting stolen was one of the biggest traumas. But, when I was younger, I was, someone tried kidnapping me and that found out he was a child killer, so it's just kind of was a lot of different things. I've been hit by cars on my bike. So that the most recent, which was a few years ago, I was hospitalized and I got a lot of PTSD from that. Fireworks or gunshots like really set me off. So like little things like that kind of really get it. But I'm at a place now where I'm setting more boundaries and letting people know if I go into a dark place or if I get sad, I let them know I normally shut down so that they're prepared. I don't know if I want to hug or if I want to be left alone, but I'm just letting you guys know this is where I'm going. And this ride is it's very intense, pedaling 80 to 100 miles a day, being chased by dogs and alligators, kind of, it takes a lot out of you. And then being on the road for as long as I am, I get lonely. I miss my loved ones, and I miss Detroit itself. I miss my city. And so I think that's a lot of that just kind of started building up, and then it just kind of all came out. and then obviously the bike and so on was the icing on the cake.
Yeah. Well, I like the grit and determination that you're going to finish this journey, even though, you're kind of licking your wounds and you're trying to regroup mentally. Cause that's gotta be definitely tough. I don't know. How many days do you suspect it'll take you to get back to Detroit?
Well, so originally I was heading even further west. My goal was Salt Lake City, but this tells you how much craziness happens. The first day I rode 88 miles from Detroit to just past Toledo, Ohio. And I had a trailer. And because the trailer I had, it took a lot, and I hurt my knees. Like, a lot of the weight from the trailer really messed up my knee, to the point where some days I couldn't even walk. And, but I still rode. I couldn't do 80 miles anymore, but I was still doing like 40 miles a day, 50 miles a day. And then the first day I lost my wallet, which had my license and my card. So it just kind of like, everyone's like, well, you should have quit the first day. But I'm like, but what fun or what journey would I have if everything went smoothly? I mean, I got all the way to basically, Cleveland with no ID and no money. So it just kind of like proves that, like, the determination, like you said, and the grit. So, I just, I decided to not do the hills in Colorado and Utah unless I for sure had a sponsorship. And unfortunately, my sponsorship fell through. So that's when I kind of decided in Oklahoma City. So instead of me heading west, I started heading back through Missouri and starting to head back home. So I think it should, at this point, take me at least I hope to be home the second weekend in October. Long version of the story, but second week in October is my goal.
Yeah. I do a lot of endurance cycling events and racing. I've never ridden cross country like you have, but I've done, 150, 200 miles in a day. And it's incredibly taxing. And doing that day after day after day with all of your gear on the bike, when you're talking about hurricanes, I've ridden in some bad weather, but never hurricane weather. And even bad, like a thunderstorm, is horrible. Getting chased by dogs, cars. I've never been hit by a car, but I have felt their mirrors. I have gotten danger close. It's a dangerous pursuit. Of all the things you could have done to bring awareness, why did you choose riding your bike cross country?
So I'm visually impaired, so I can't drive. And I actually got my license because of my vision. My license was just taken away from me 3 days before I left. And to be honest, like, I knew it was coming eventually. My eyes haven't changed since birth, but it just it's a birth defect. And I think a lot of it actually has to do with my father being in Vietnam and being exposed to Agent Orange. They feel that a lot of that has to do with my vision, but unfortunately, I don't know who to contact to figure out, because every time I try and reach out to somebody about that, I don't get any answers or replies back. But everything I've read and people I've talked to, because of it being nerves, they say that is for sure why. That's why my dad died early, is because of his exposure to Vietnam or to Agent Orange. And like the day he died, we got a letter from the government basically saying, yes, you were exposed to Agent Orange, and you know what I mean? So it just was kind of like a eye-opening, because for years they told him, oh, we were never there. So anyways, I chose to ride my bicycle mainly because I think more people's eyes would be on what I was doing. If I was driving a car or anything like that, would people really want to watch it? Maybe if I was doing like really cool things, if I had a good sponsor and I could be doing even bigger and better things, and then a car could have been. I know there's a guy right now who's riding across the country on a little scooter, and you got Bear Son who's in a giant bear costume walking across. People are really watching them because it's different. It's crazy. And I think more eyes are on me because I'm actually on a bicycle. Now, if I had a trail car, then I wouldn't have my saddlebag. So my knees wouldn't be as bad as they are now. And I probably would be a lot farther than I am now, because I could, for sure, with the less weight, I could do more 80 to 100-mile days. But, now I have to be like, okay, there's a lot. I have to check the elevation of the hills and where I can go. So.
Especially here, Missouri. I guess you went, it's really hilly around here.
6 years ago, we basically tackled the Ozarks, and that was like, and we did 100 miles that day. So I was like, this is the worst day of our riding. But then with this trip, I stuck to more of the expressway because of the giant shoulder, which obviously screwed me in the end, but the giant shoulder, and it wasn't as hilly, because some of the hills in Missouri are actually really fun, because it was like by the time you get down, you're already up the next one. So those days are really, really fun.
Yeah, I'm a bigger guy, so when I'm in a race or whatever, and I'm hitting those rollers, my inertia pushes me over. I'm sure with all the gear, and you kind of crest the hill, and you can kind of get enough momentum to get you over the next one without a lot of effort. It can get a lot of fun.
I think I was at 52 miles an hour one time going downhill.
That's fast. That's fast on a bike.
Yes, I know. I was like, if I just stick, I'm done.
Yeah, no kidding. So, I guess what I always like to ask people is what are some of your daily routines, daily habits to help you just thrive, to perform at your best? Do you have what does your morning routine typically look like?
Pancakes.
Carbo loading.
Carbo loading. I don't eat as much as I probably should. Because sometimes I just, for some reason, don't have an appetite. But honestly, every morning I wake up early. I start to stretch. I'll get a light breakfast because I don't want to be too heavy. But I really focus on what my day was like yesterday and what I envision my day being like the next day. So I just try and see what did I do yesterday that I can do better today, and focus on. And then also just really kind of realizing am I doing everything I can with what I'm doing, more or less. It's just some days I wish I could be doing random acts of kindness the entire days, but some days I got to catch up because it's starting to get really cold up north. So he's stuck in the snow or the rain. So some days I'm doing 90 to 100 miles in a day, and then I pass out. So a lot of it is just visually looking at where I'm at, visually looking at to make sure that I'm safe mentally and healthy. Because a lot of times, me personally, and I can say this for a lot of friends, my friend sent me this amazing poem about basically someone had a divorce from their heart to their brain, and they weren't communicating. And so sometimes I just want to make sure that my heart is communicating with my brain, and that they're both showing as much love as they can to the world and to myself. So, I know that a lot of people's concern with me is my safety. And so that's, and I know with me, because I'm pretty chill during this time, if I get any stress or if I'm too much energy, I could get hurt. And so that's why I just try and wake up in the morning, listen to some, very chill music, and just focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, it's a form of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I was there's a gratitude practice that I learned. I think it's from Tony Robbins. He talks about there's scientific studies that they've put people on EKG, and then they put them on I forgot what they call it for the brain, but it's different. Like your brain and your heart, they put off a sine wave. Mm-hmm. But when you stop and you actually have gratitude and you put your hand on your heart, you breathe into your heart, and you're focused, the sine wave from your brain and your heart that are typically opposite will actually come together, and you can actually connect your brain and your heart together in that moment of gratitude. It's really a powerful thing. So the fact that you said that was really made me think about that gratitude practice of there's definitely a connection between the brain and the heart. The brain is very logical, but the mm-hmm. heart is where you still have, your brain is connected to every aspect of your body. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for people to realize that and understand that. And when you're in deep gratitude, you can actually connect the brain and heart and be in sync, and it can be very peaceful. And what you just described was almost, it's a form of meditation is really what it is.
A lot of times I get in my own head, I had an amazing childhood. I had the greatest parents that I could personally have. I know some people are like, I have the best mom. I'm sure you do, but for me, I could say I had the best mom and dad for me and raised me to be the best me I could be. But sometimes I've always had this little voice in my head that would tell me things that are negative. It's like a little troll on the computer, or it just basically like, you don't deserve those parents, or whatever. But sometimes it's just letting my heart remind my head that, because I have a huge heart and I love people, but sometimes I don't love myself enough. So I think that's where my heart's trying to say, hey, quiet down. This is a great person and he's doing great things. And it's okay to accept help. It's okay to give help. So I think that's my friend said this to me right before I left. He's an amazing guy, Stephen McGee. He said, do you know the answers you're looking for? And then before I could even answer him, he said, but do you even know the question to those answers? And then I was about to answer him. And then he said, because if you don't know the question to the answer, you're going to have an amazing journey. And that's where it just kind of made me realize, one, he's Yoda. And two, it just made me realize, like, I have no game plan for what I'm doing. And it's been so much fun. Like, who knew I was going to get my bike stolen, or I was going to be in a hurricane or chased by 41 dogs? At the end of the day, it makes for a great journey of what I'm doing. And I couldn't be happier.
That's one of the reasons that people ask, like, why do you do all these endurance events? Because when I'm in that moment, when I'm doing like an adventure race or a really long bike, you don't know what's going to happen next, and you're so engrossed in the moment. Like, you just focus, and it gives you a lot of gratitude. I know, like, when I was just telling someone not too long ago, like, I'll be like 150 miles in a race of a 200-mile race, and you get so hungry. Like, I'll eat my Cliff Bar. I can feel the nutrients of the Cliff Bar. Like, and it makes me so grateful for that moment that I have the physical ability to do it. There's just so many things. We get caught up in the day-to-day creature comforts or our routines. We forget that we're beings, that we weren't designed to live in these concrete jungles that we live in the way that we do. And so many people are discontent. They're chasing, they're unhappy. They're projecting negativity. And I think it's because we're not connected in the elements that we were designed to go out and do these difficult things and have these journeys and have these experiences with people and connect with other people. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's so much unhappiness and discontentment in the world.
Exactly. You have to constantly reinvent yourself, and when lockdown first happened, like, me personally, I could say I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. And it's like, I sat at my kitchen table because I knew that our world was going to change. And how am I going to reinvent myself? How are other businesses going to reinvent themselves? And, you see a lot of these businesses that had to change. And if they didn't change, they were left behind. And I think with just life itself, I could sit in my house all day and be depressed. Or like, what I did personally is every morning I woke up, I rode my bike a mile to watch the sunrise, and I photographed the sunrise, and I basically let the world wake up with me. And then I would go run. I'm not even a runner. I never knew why people ran. I used to joke, if I ever get ran, I bet someone chasing me. But like, I was running 5 miles a day. Then I'd go work. I made hand sanitizer just to make ends meet. So I would go work for 12-hour days, and I would do this every day. And it was just getting me into a new routine, out of my comfort zone, and to be able to just be moving constantly. And that's kind of with this, I'm out of my comfort zone. Who knew, if you told me 4 months ago I would have been doing this, I'd be like, what? I'm like, you're chubby. You got a beer gut and a pizza gut. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm like, I gotta do it. If I don't do it, I'll never know. I never want to live.
That's it, man. No regrets. Live life on offense, as my friend Mike Burke would say, and just get out and live it, do it. And you're a shining example of that. People are so caught up in their day-to-day careers, they wouldn't think of doing what you're doing right now.
Well, and I think with COVID, it's definitely given people the opportunity to like someone said to me, they're like, oh, it must be nice. You're not working to do that and you could do this. And I'm like, actually, I am working. Like it's, I wake up early in the morning and I spend a little time working, and then for a while, and at night I will do the rest. And a lot of times, a lot of businesses are supporting you to work from home, or maybe not work 5 days a week anymore. So then those people could be doing things out of their comfort zone. And it might obviously not be what I'm doing, but it could be something simple like my cousin. Michigan shaped like a mitten, and he rode his bicycle from the very bottom of the mitten all the way through the center, basically up the middle finger. He rode it one day, 250 miles on his bicycle with two other guys, and he, it was all money raised for cancer. And it's like that gave him the opportunity that he couldn't normally do, because now he's working from home, so he could do something like this. Yeah, it's
awesome. It's awesome. It's people just getting out of their own way and just realizing you can create and design the life that you want, so you can do what it is you want to do.
Exactly. Sometimes we get too comfortable, and like, my friends who live in Connecticut, they've been married, high school sweethearts, married for 20 some years, and all the kids are moving out of college. And I basically told my buddy, I was like, you have to now re-date again. You guys have been together for so long, and you've had this life of the kids. Now you're just going to be you two in a house. I'm like, you got to really wow her and go back to dating like when you're in high school. Take her out to dinner, take her to the movies, have picnics, instead of you just sitting on the couch watching football, like, you got to keep it going, keep it moving, change your routine. So he's like, I know, so it's just something different, or because if we stick in the same routine, life's going to pass you by.
You get that comfort zone, and you camp there a little too long.
No, you can't, because then, like me, it's like, I hurt both my hands, and then all of a sudden I'm like not working out anymore. I was like, I don't have to work out anymore. And then I'm like, I'll wear the next size shirt up. I don't need to be in this size anymore.
Yeah.
I have to buy a new shirt. I was like, wait, what am I doing? Like, I'm too comfortable. Like I have a cup it has SpongeBob working out on it, and it's like, this working out thing isn't working out. but if it was easy, we'd all be doing it.
Absolutely. Now, you have a lot of reference. You mentioned your mom and dad quite a bit. So what was the greatest lesson your father taught you?
A lot. My dad was an amazing man. I couldn't really pinpoint it. Like, my dad would like women. Like, when I was a kid, I was probably like 11 or 12, and he would teach me. Oh, I actually know the best lesson, but I'll finish this story. So he would teach me about mirrors, and he would say, all right, see those two girls over there? Don't look at them. Look in the mirror. He goes, they're checking you out, And so, like, he would teach me little things like that. He would teach me to never have my back to a door, because, the old Wild Bill thing. And, like, you always want to see everyone who's coming in through the door. And, but the greatest lesson was how to kind of like business networking and things like that. My dad started a business with his buddy. It was just them in the basement, and it became a very successful business. And my dad talked about like computer software, which is really boring, but my dad was a very giant man. His nickname was Bear. And so he'd wear a suit, but then he'd wear like really funny ties. So, and then very funny socks. So when people started getting like tired, he would open up his jacket and you'd see Winnie the Pooh, and then all of a sudden everyone laughed. And then when they started to get tired, he'd put his foot up and you'd see like Bugs Bunny on his socks, and people would laugh. And then his final thing is I would come out, this little 8-year-old boy, and in a little like, used car salesman suit, and I would read the rest of his speech for him. So it kind of like switching it up and just not your normal speech. So I would go to business networking events and expos with him when I was like 8 or 9. And my biggest thing, instead of collecting baseball cards, I collect baseball cards. Instead of collecting baseball cards, I collect business cards. And so my dad, I would show him these stack of cards. And I'm like, look at all these people, these cards I got, and he even bought me a book where I would put the cards in the book like I would baseball cards, and I put them in order of people's, their business and their name. And so my dad finally was starting to say, he's like, well, tell me about that person. And I would say, I don't know about that person, because I just grabbed their business card. And he said, this is what you need to start doing, is get their card and find out 3 things about this. And granted, I was 9, I was a little kid. So then instead of me having this giant stack of business cards, I was going home with my dad, and then I would have a stack of maybe 12 cards. And then I would tell my dad, well, this is Mark. He has 3 kids. He loves the Chicago Cubs, and it became this thing where it got to the point where I was asking, local business people to give me autographs. And so my dad realized that it taught me the connection between somebody. And, you know, you can just grab someone's card, but you know that person. And so to the day, it's just it realized like success isn't about the numbers, it's quality, not quantity. And my dad really taught me to be more of a people person, to always be in the public. You know, my dad would say, if you can talk in front of a group of people, you can write your own ticket, you know, and things like that. But, you know, but at the end of the day, my dad would always, on the weekends, he'd work 9 to 5, but on the weekends, we would go and help our community. But he always took time for my mom. My dad bought my mom a Snickers bar every day of her life. And he would kiss her on the forehead and say, I love you, and put the Snicker bar down. And when I got older, I was like, why do you do that? You know, and he said, every day is Valentine's Day when you're loved. And every day I love your mom more and more and more. So yeah, he taught me a lot of life lessons, man, and unconditional love, which is very rare these days. And he set the bar pretty high, but he's a great dude.
I was actually on a radio station this morning. We were talking about relationships and whatnot. I love that every day is Valentine's Day, because oftentimes we're talking about that boredom in relationships. People will only buy flowers on Valentine's Day or on the anniversary, and you need to be doing that stuff more often, like not on those days, to make a greater impact.
Exactly.
What about your mom? What was the greatest lesson your mom taught you?
Patience. You know, she, my mom loved everybody. You know, she had a plate at the kitchen table every day. Like, one of the happiest times growing up in my life was the kitchen table, because my dad would give us a newspaper in the morning and he'd tell us to pick out one article. And then he would have us read, you know, talk about the article at dinner, and he'd ask our questions. And there was a lot of laughter, a lot of love, a lot of joy at the table. And then with my mom, she'd always set an extra plate, because you never knew who was coming in our house. It was like a sitcom. Like, all of a sudden someone would walk in and then fake applause. But she always knew that one of our friends might not have dinner that night and might want to not be at home. But it just, with her, you know, she was so kind. I never heard her swear in her life. And you could look at her and just swear and yell. I never did, obviously, but you know, you could. And then she'd just be like, I'm sorry you're having a bad day. Do you want to have a cookie? You know, because my mom would have us, we had a cookie before every meal, because she didn't want us to spoil our dessert, you know, because she was like just that wholesome and that sweet. And the only time I ever saw her get mad is because chocolate and caffeine, like, kind of, you know, heightens the multiple sclerosis. And then someone came up to her and got really close in her wheelchair and was like, they're like, you know, if you stop eating chocolate, it could help you live longer. And she just gritted her teeth. I'd rather die than quit chocolate. So yeah, no, it's definitely patient. She's one of the kindest, soft-spoken people I've ever met. So
yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. They sound like great people, for sure.
They were,
obviously,
man.
They made an impact.
Yeah, he did. And I learned through social media, like especially TikTok, when I found my voice, is when I really started expressing my parents. Because I mean, my mom and dad, it's been 15, 20 years, you know, and it's still hard, you know, and but through social media, I've been telling more stories about them. And a lot of people can relate, because either they lost a parent or, you know, whatever. And I think that's what is helping me cope with it more, is trying to be more vocal and sharing their memory, which is amazing. I just had one of the greatest honors as a childhood friend. His father just died. And he said to me, I love what you're doing, riding your bike and doing random acts of kindness. He gave me $200. And he said, can you do a random act of kindness in my father's name? And it was just like the most honor I could feel. And for probably 1,000 miles, I was just thinking, like, what can I do? You know, that's such a huge thing. And I've thought of so many different random acts I could do in his name. And finally it hit me, is there's a guy that I'm friends with on social media where it's called Little Bricks Charity. And basically he gets, for every $5, it's a Lego brick. And then he gets Legos to sick children in hospitals, so they can have something that calms them down, blah, 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 you know, things at home and comfort. And so I FaceTimed him 2 days ago, and I said, you know, I love what you're doing, and I would love to give you told him the story of my friends giving me $200 in his father's name. I'm going to match that, and we're going to do $400 in his dad's name. And then a company said, well, we're going to match that. So now that little $200 act of kindness turned to an $800 random act of kindness. So 42 children are going to get Lego packs in the hospital in the next little bit. So it's just, it was an honor, and I was glad to help with his father because he knew that I lost my father as well. So.
Yeah. Wow. No, I love that. And oftentimes on this podcast and conversation, we talked about happiness, and to find that enduring happiness, the happiness that just makes you feel alive when you're giving and doing acts of kindness that makes an impact, it is so powerful. And you're going to remember that. Like that's an experience that you're never going to forget. You can find happiness in an ice cream cone, but as soon as you ingest it, you're going to start feeling it's not the same kind of happiness. It's a different type of happiness.
Especially at our age. And why did I eat that much ice cream?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when I tell people about happiness and how to seek it, that's where I would start. Start off by doing simple, random acts of kindness. And it's going to give you some level of joy and satisfaction. We need more of that in the world.
Yeah. Simple something like I was in Connecticut and I went to the McDonald's drive-thru and I scared the snot out of the cashier, but I said, hey, I'm going to make your job a lot easier. I'm going to buy all these people's lunch. And she's like, what? I was like, yeah. And I just sat there, and every person who came up, and they came up to me. They're like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, I just want you to know you're amazing and you're loved. And I hope you have an amazing day, and just pay it forward to somebody else.
Yeah.
It didn't cost me. I probably paid for, 100 people's stuff, and it didn't cost me that much money, because sometimes it was just one lady coming in for a cup of coffee, so it was just that quick thing. Or even like next time you're in a drive-thru to get coffee, by the person behind you, and it just it will surprise them. I think it was a year ago where there was a coffee shop where it was like, I think the record was like 5 weeks where people were like buying the person behind them, and it was a huge thing where everyone was paying it forward to the person behind them. So it's just
awesome.
It doesn't really cost, a lot of my favorite random acts that I didn't cost me a dime. A lot of it is just picking up trash. When I was in New Orleans, right before the hurricane, I went to the New Orleans animal shelter, and I ended up walking a lot of the dogs, just before they went down for the night. And then it didn't cost me a dime. I was super stoked because the dogs are adorable and they weren't chasing me. And then all of a sudden the people there said, hey, can you help us? We're trying to transport all these animals to a safer location. So then it went from me just walking these dogs to spending 6 hours getting all the animals to a safer location before the hurricane hit. And it made me feel great. And like the reward I got is, one, these animals are safe, but then obviously I got a lot of snuggles from the puppies, but the cats, not so much. They were a-holes, but it's free, it's kindness can be free.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. One final question. Is there any books or podcasts or movies or anything like that that's made a tremendous impact on you that you would recommend for somebody?
Man, that's tough. Far as podcasts, there is one that I listen to called Finding Fred. That one is about Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers. And I love that podcast because the host is amazing. He's African-American. And it was amazing to hear his interpretation of this super chill white dude basically raising him and his friends, and kind of his perspective of Mr. Rogers. And then you get to hear all these amazing, powerful stories about Mr. Rogers that, you'd ever heard and what he did. Because a lot of times when I'm in a dark place, the way that helps me, and I can't speak for anybody else, but what helps me is I go to my kitchen table as a kid, like mentally, and I'll either sit down with, my parents and try and relive old memories, or just talk to them about current things that are happening to me. But one time, or a few times now, but one time it really hit me, is I sat down and I had Mr. Rogers, Steve Irwin, Jim Henson, and I had LeVar Burton and Bob Ross. So you have someone who loves the environment, someone who loves the animals, someone who loves life and people, and and just the energy of all those people helped raise me, And it was just amazing just the energy of to be in a room with them. Like no words were said. It was just being able to sit there at this table and see these people that helped mold me and who loved life at the end of the day. And they were who they were on camera as they were off camera. So Finding Fred for sure. The movie Pay It Forward. It's an old movie. It's the kid from I See Dead People, the Sick Side. So I never saw it before. And then someone's like, you have to see it. And that movie really impacted me. And it was funny because, well, not funny, but ironic, because my roommate at the time, I was like, you got to watch this movie, man. It changed me. Like, da-da-da. And he called me at work. He goes, this movie's kind of boring and slow. I go, did you watch the whole movie? He goes, no. Then he watched the whole movie and then he calls it back at work. He goes, man, I hate you, dude. Grown man bawling. But, it's just something similar to like what I'm doing now is like, pay it forward. I'm not asking for anything. Like with social media, I've done this my whole life in social media, though. I have to put this more out there because people are helping me and I want them to know where their money's going. But at the end, there's some things I will not post. I will not post me feeding homeless people, and things like that. I'll post me getting the food and the clothes, but I will not, out of respect to people. But at the end of the day, like, it's all I want at the end of the day is if I can help somebody and they just pay it forward back to somebody else. So those are definitely the two for me that come right off the mind.
No, I appreciate that. Finding Fred podcast. Never heard of that one. I'll check that one out. Pay it forward.
And I just kind of came across it because it's Fred Rogers. And then he actually interviews a lot of people. And then there's this famous podcast guy, but he does more like, I think he does more like grittier stuff, more adult stuff, but he interviewed him for this podcast. And basically when he was a kid, his parents moved to Russia and Soviet Union, and this kid was super depressed because they didn't have Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood on TVs in Russia. So his mom wrote a written letter to Mr. Rogers. So what did he do? He flew to Russia and he brought all his puppets and he sat down with this little kid, and basically played with the puppets. He sat with him, he talked with him, let him know that he loves him. And even though he can't see him on TV, he's still with him. And, wow. And he said, he goes, who knew? Like, could you imagine right now if I'm like, all of a sudden Mr. Rogers shows up at your house and just be like, what?
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, Colin, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. I'm sorry about your luck. Selfishly though, had this not happened, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation today. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that someone is supposed to listen to this and there's going to get some value from this. So thank you. I think, we're trying to make lemonade out of lemons. There's no doubt that I've been impacted. I think this was a fantastic conversation. And I tell people all the time, this podcast is a selfish endeavor because I'm always like looking for interesting people, but to interview and talk to. And I'm sorry this happened to you, but no doubt that someone's gonna get some value from it. And how can my listeners, if they want to support you or get a hold of you or follow you, how can they get in contact with you?
On all social media platforms, I'm Colin Detroit, COLIN Detroit. TikTok, Colin313, but you could still find me on Colin Detroit on TikTok. Facebook, everything. It just, you can connect with me there and let's be friends. And I try to get back to people as much as I can. And sometimes it's a little overwhelming, but at the end of the day, I think it's, got to keep the social media and I love it because you never know. It's like with this ride, I've made so many friends like you now that next time I'm in Missouri, I got somebody I can go grab tacos with,
Absolutely. There's a whole thread here. All my cycling friends, which you probably haven't heard from yet, are like, what does he need? What kind of bike parts? There's no doubt that you could leave Waynesville on a bike if you wanted to. And I know you've got so much support. We're here for you. We're cheering you on. This is just part of the journey. I think you said it perfectly. Like, you're going to remember this experience, even though you got kicked in the junk. No one likes to get kicked in the junk. That's part of the journey. And you got to look at the bright side of it. And I think that you are. And I appreciate you taking the time and having this opportunity to come on and have this conversation.
Oh, thank you, my friend.
Colin, wish you best of luck. For all the rest of the listeners out there, keep doing hard things. We will see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching this episode of the Do Hard Things podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Colin. I hope that wherever you're at, I challenge you to conduct a random act of kindness. Tell someone to pay it forward. I think truly, if we want to put kindness in the world, we need to sprinkle it everywhere. And I hope that you gain some great value from this podcast. Additionally, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Leave a comment, review, reach out to me on social media, and share this with a friend. There's so much garbage out there, so much negativity. Please share this with a friend who needs to hear this message today. In the meantime, keep doing hard things. We will see you in the next episode.